Hi everyone. Before we start the video and talk about diesel heaters, I want to again thank those of you that have purchased a sticker from me. I've got stickers available for a PayPal donation of $10. There'll be a link in the description below where you can click through. I'm going to ship those out weekly. So thank you again, and let's talk about diesel heaters. Yeah, you're seeing the Mr. Buddy heater out, and you're gonna say, well, David, why do you have that out when you've got that fancy diesel air heater? Well, I want to update everybody on the diesel air heater. So I use that for 6 or 7 weeks, not every night, obviously, off and on, and loved it. One click, turns on, truck heats up. It was pretty overpowered for the truck. I was using it in, let's say, 45-degree weather overnight, and so I had to run it on the lowest setting. And even at that, sometimes it would get pretty warm in here. The truck is sealed up pretty dang good, and it's insulated, so it would heat this up in here, sometimes a little bit too warm for me. And excuse me. So went online, watched some YouTube videos, found out that the 1.6 hertz, which was the lowest setting, could actually be adjusted if you go into the administration settings. So, on the control panel, you can go into the settings, and if you know the admin password, you can get into the administrative settings and change RPM, maximum RPM, minimum, maximum temperature, minimum temperature. And when I say temperature, that hertz control, that's how many clicks the fuel pump is pumping. The less amount of clicks, the temperature is going to come down. So I saw a guy that had lowered his down to 1.2 because he had a small space that he was heating. So I put mine down to 1.2, and I ran it at 1.2, and it ran. And I ran it at 1.2 overnight. And I woke up in the morning, and when this is running, and those of you that have these know all this, when this is running, there's a little graphic that comes up inside the diagram of the heater here, and it basically, what it shows is some green bars, then some yellow bars, and then some red bars. And as the heater turns on and comes up the temperature, the green bars light, then the yellow bars, then the red bars. And when it's running, all those are lit up. It's at full operating temperature. So when I was running it at 1.2 and I woke up in the morning, so what happened, I was running it at that 1.2 setting comfortably in the truck, got up the next morning and went outside and noticed an odor, a combustion diesel odor, which I normally never smelled. So I came in and looked at the control panel, and the two red bars that are normally lit in the graphic when it's at full operating temperature, they were not illuminated. Only the yellow bars were, which means it wasn't really running at full operating temperature. So it was kind of chugging along, incomplete combustion. That's what I was smelling outside. It was passing fuel right out the tailpipe. So I immediately increased the setting to get the red bars, and it ramped up and it started running again. But so anyways, I didn't use it for a while just because I didn't need it. Then I ran it one night, and I woke up and it had shut itself off in the middle of the night. When, I don't know, but I woke up and it wasn't running. So I started it in the morning to knock the chill out of the truck, and it ran for about 10 or 15 minutes and shut itself off again. And it gave me an error code, E08. So when you look at the at the English troubleshooting sheet, E08 talks about blockage in the fuel line, mainly blockage in the fuel line. It also talks about make sure that the temperature sensor connections are good. Well, this model doesn't have a temperature sensor, a chassis temperature sensor. It doesn't have that. It started, it ran, it shut itself off. So now fast forward about another week and a half to where we are today, and I've been struggling with this thing. So I went out and I checked all the fuel lines. I disconnected them at each connection and made sure I had good flow, which I did. I took the filter apart and cleaned it out. There was really nothing in there. The filter had good flow. I blew through it. All the lines were clear. There was no blockage in the fuel system. I verified that. So I've tried, I checked all the electrical connections too, everything. Everything is very solid. You know, there were no issues when I connected this thing up, and I rechecked all the connections and everything is good. So I start it, it runs, it shuts itself off after about 10 minutes. It gives me the error. Then I try to start it and it won't start at all, ever, and it gives error code E10. So when it shuts itself off, when it's been running, it's E08. When it won't even start, it gives E10, which also talks about fuel system blockage. So what I notice is, now sometimes I can get it to start. So I went onto the Facebook groups that are concentrated on these heaters and described, you know, what led up to this. And a couple of guys said, you've dirtied it up inside, you're gonna have to take it apart and clean it. I'm like, great, you know. So one guy said, if you can get it to run, try running it on the highest setting for a couple of hours and see if you can blow everything out. So I did start it a couple days ago, got it to start, ran it on the highest setting, which is 5.0 hertz. So that pump is really firing, and it ran. It's not smoking, it's just, you know, it's running. It's putting out a ton of heat, and after about 15 minutes, it shut itself off again. And what I notice is, when it shuts itself off, the pump stops clicking. So it'll be running, and all of a sudden the pump stops clicking. But on the screen readout, it's still showing the little indicator that the pump is running, but the pump isn't clicking anymore. So I'm starting to think like the pump has gone bad. So I got it to start yesterday. Now sometimes it won't start. I got it to start yesterday, and I ran it on 5 and then down to 4.5 for about an hour and a half. And I had the windows open, and I had the roof vent fan running because it was hot in here. You know, yesterday was chilly. It was only like 59 degrees, 60 degrees yesterday, and rainy, and just a miserable day. So good day to have the heater running. So I ran it for about an hour and a half, and I'm like, oh great, it's fixed now. It's gonna stay. And then all of a sudden, pump stops clicking, and it shuts itself off and gives me E08 again, error code. I try to restart it, won't even start, gives me E10 error code. So I don't feel like it's been dirtied up, because when it runs perfect. And it's not smoking, it's not like it's burning carbon out or anything. It's that the pump stops running. The pump stops clicking. And the control panel is saying the pump is still running, but it's not. It's not making any noise. So I'm lost on this thing. Okay, so fast forward. I think that video that we were just watching, I shot that about 3 weeks ago. So in the time since I shot that, I have fixed the heater. So what it turned out to be was the pump. So this is the type of pump that comes on these. This is it's called a clacker pump or clicker pump, and uses 12 volts. Click, 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 and each click is a pump, a push of liquid. So all of the symptoms that I was experiencing where the pump was stopping. So I just wasn't sure, was the pump failing or was the controller no longer sending a signal to the pump for it to be firing. So what did I do? So I bought a pump. They're very inexpensive. I got the pump, and right before I installed it, I said, okay, I'm gonna test this. Simple troubleshooting. I turned on the heater. It did not start. So in the startup cycle, it you click go, and it runs the fan and it does its some different things, and then after a little bit of time, the pump starts firing. That's the way it's supposed to start up. And when the little symbol comes on the controller and the pump is supposed to be firing, I didn't hear it. So I tested that, it was not working. So then I swapped in, took out this old pump and swapped in the new pump, hit the on button, it went through its fans, and when the symbol came on, the new pump started clicking immediately. So I said, okay, I just proved it, it was the pump. So since I put the new pump in, it's been operating perfectly, no problems. So now I want to figure out what caused this pump to go bad. Was it my operation? Was it the fact that I had reduced it down to that 1.2 hertz setting and ran it too low? In other words, did I break this pump is what I wanted to figure out. So again, I went back onto that Facebook group. There's one that's really active, and you do get feedback when you post a question. And I asked about these pumps, and so what I was told was, in many instances when they fail, you can get them to start working again by knocking on them and blowing through them. So what happens is if you get a small piece of debris in there, it can just wreak havoc on the inside of these things. So what you're trying to do is basically dislodge the piece of debris in there. So by knocking on the case and then blowing air through it, many times you can get them to come back to life. So I haven't yet messed around with this just because, we've been traveling and things like that. So I would like to try to get it to work again, because then that would kind of prove to me that it was from a piece of debris or dirt or something that got in there. I would like to kind of prove that out. They come with filters. Here's a filter of the exact same type that's actually installed on the truck. And boy, it's a little windy out here, sorry. This filter is, it's got a metal mesh screen. And like I said, I did take the filter out and I didn't see anything in it. I cleaned it out with some aerosol cleaner and like parts cleaner, but I didn't really see anything in there. But I am going to replace this metal type with the paper filter, which are better. I do want to put a paper filter in there because I think that the paper filter is going to be a lot better. Excuse me, Lefty had a bad morning. He I think had a little bit too much Easter ham yesterday, and this morning he upchucked it, didn't you? Yeah, he's okay now. He rinsed his mouth out and had his breakfast, so that's put that behind him. Come here, buddy. So the heater is back operational. What I did learn when I was speaking to the Facebook group is if you mess around with those administrative settings, your minimum and maximum fan temperature and minimum and maximum pump hertz, you're playing with fire. The reason those are in there is when you run it on the temperature setting. So imagine this, you put it on 75 degrees temperature. When it's operating automatically like that, it's going to go from the lowest setting to the highest setting to keep that temperature. And if you've adjusted those minimum and maximum settings, it's going to go to where you've put them at, and you could cause a problem. Now, I also learned that for different altitude settings, you need to change those minimum and maximum settings. So altitude, we're at 5,000 feet right now. So I found one guy had done a bunch of testing and came up with a chart of minimum and maximum settings for different altitudes. So I have it set right now for the recommended 5,000 foot altitude, and that's what I have it set at. I've been running it at about 1.9, which is because it's chilly here at night, and that's been keeping us really good night's sleep. I mean, the heater is just great, you know. So earlier in the video, you know, from a few weeks ago, I was really frustrated because the thing is so great that I always want to have it available when I need it at the click of a button, which it is back at that state now. So to have to break out that Mr. Buddy heater there a few weeks ago in the video, you saw that, you know, I ran through a 1 pound propane tank, and by 3 in the morning, I had to switch out another one because we had a really chilly night, and I'm like, I'm not going through this cold stuff again. So don't mess with your settings unless you know what you're doing. Learn from my mistakes. You know, did I cause the pump to fail? Maybe, but I learned to not mess with those settings if you're not certain of what you're doing, and I wasn't, you know. And the guy who I saw in the video that put his at 1.2, I know he probably had a lot of issues after doing that. So I hope he got that figured out. So I feel like I've read a lot of stories on that Facebook group, people that have had these heaters for years, no issues. But they do a couple of things where they do the adjustments for altitude, and they also, before they shut it off, they ramp it up so you're not running it at real low setting and then shutting it off. You ramp it up so it's really running hot and burning out any carbon buildup, and then you shut it off. So I've been doing that also. Before I shut it off, I ramp it way up, and plus that puts a huge blast of heat in the truck right before you turn it off. So, and that's needed sometimes. So like right now, we're going down in the 30s, low 30s right now. There's a little cold snap for the next several days, about the next week. So yes, I do need this heater. Ooh, Lefty just found him a little playmate. What do you got there, buddy? Look out, let me see. Oh, that's a scary looking little beetle right there. You leave that thing alone. I don't know what that'll do to you. So all of you, thanks for watching. If you liked the video, give me a thumbs up. If you didn't like it, give me a thumbs down, and leave me a comment about why you didn't like it. Well, just leave me a comment, because I like hearing from all of you.